Attack speed Ao Kuang is back. And this is not an exaggeration, this is not a joke. He is back with full force to the level where he's played successfully, very successfully, in the SPL. We recently had a game where Scream, formerly known as Verizial, literally went 9-0 against Luminosity with attack speed Ao Kuang. At this point, I'd like to shout out not only Scream himself for making this build work on the highest level of play and making me see that it's absolutely viable now, but also Merlin Macron, who was the one who pointed me towards it. Before we go through the specifics of this build, how it works and so on, I'd like to quickly show you some clips from this very game just to see how much potential there really is. In the first clip here, you'll see Ao Kuang having completed his hastened ring and working on a second ring and also having his CDR boots. So it's relatively early in the game still, but we already have the fundamentals of the build ready. He's chasing down an enemy at the top right of the screen, Shadow Chair in this case, and he grabs him relatively quickly here, closes the distance, and you can see how he just insanely quickly shreds through him with those dragons. Quickly after that, chasing down a little bit later, he also picks up a second kill on Geno because he didn't even have to use his ultimate in that very fight. And this is something that we'll see throughout the clips, is how much damage Ao Kuang with this build can do without the ultimate, whereas otherwise he's very dependent on that. Here we see him go in and actually try and get the kill with the ultimate, but then even without the ultimate, picking up the kill on Shadow Chair very, very quickly anyways. The next clips put together here are probably the craziest ones. Here we can first see him chasing down Shadow Chair once again, who can't even deal enough damage in his ultimate compared to the Ao Kuang that sheds through him so quickly. And then very briefly after juking some ult attacks from Weaken here, there is another engage on that Phoenix down in the middle lane. And Scream just goes in on the next target, Kiki in this case, and picks up yet another kill once again, this time with the team, but still dealing a lot of damage himself. And then we see him pick up a third kill on the Phoenix, just diving the Phoenix, once again not even using the ultimate for it. So you can really see that the ultimate isn't even that necessary for him in many of these situations to deal insane amounts of damage. And that really is the deciding factor why I personally think that an attack speed build, when it works well enough, is much better than an ability focused build. Ao Kuang with ability burst typically uses all of his abilities to take out a single target and can then re-engage and help out with the ultimate. Usually you go in with your blink, use your 3-2 combo, get some basics in and then hope the target is low enough to ult. With a basic attack build, that is not the case. With the dragons alone and the basic attacks with the right items, which we'll talk about, you deal so much damage that you don't even need to ult in so many situations, and then you still have the ult as an opener to take out tanks, as Verizial did in that one situation, or just to get a second kill afterwards as soon as your cooldowns are back up. Basic attack Ao Kuang was one of the most feared gods in the SPL when he was at his strongest point. At this point, Magi's Blessing still had a very short cooldown as well, so you could quickly get out of many situations that were problematic. He was often built with Hasten Fatalis back then, and an overall more attack speed focused build. He would stick to enemies, deal absurd amounts of damage with his 2, and many nerfs followed to the 2 to make it more even. After these nerfs, ability Ao Kuang simply became a lot more viable and a lot stronger, so many people opted into that instead when he was played. He was still very successful with those builds, though not quite on the same scale as with his basic attack builds. Then, with further item changes, he kind of fell off the radar and out of the meta. That is, until now. There were some changes throughout quite a few patches that led to Ao Kuang doing better. Before we talk about the changes, let's look at how much better he is really doing, because after all, a single game could just be a bit of a fluke. Ao Kuang used to have a reputation as of late as a pub stomping god, who gets the highest win rates in the divisions where people just don't know how to play against him and he can just run over them. Guess what? At this point, the opposite is actually the case. If you look at the stats for Ao Kuang in ranked currently, then you will see that the lowest rating that he has is actually in bronze, with a 46% win rate. So bronze players simply don't know how to play him effectively enough, probably don't use the right items, and as such, just aren't as successful. In silver, the pub stomping thing is probably still relatively true. He has 58% win rate. Ao Kuang is a god that is not extremely hard to master, I would say, or at least not extremely hard to play on an okay level. So many people on this level know how to play him, but not everyone knows how to counter him. But then you get to gold and plat, and you see people learning how to counter him. He still does decently though. He has a 52% win rate. But his highest win rate out of all is actually in Diamond Plus with almost 60%. His overall win rate is 54.48%, so it's not exactly crazy. It's above average, but not super good. And he has a bit of a ban rate, a bit of a pick rate, so he's there. But you could think that, hey, maybe, you know, with not that many people being in Diamond Plus and everything else surrounding that, there may just not be enough information for the statistics. That may not be entirely incorrect, but look at his pick rate. He's got a 15.66% pick rate in Diamond Plus, meaning that a lot of people, relatively compared to other gods, still play him, meaning that his statistics tell you a lot more about his performance. And looking at the overall stats, he has the 6th highest win rate in ranked on Diamond Plus, and he is the only god with an above 10% pick rate by far. Everyone else is below 7%. The gods that follow after him are Mercury and Baron Samedi, and those are the only ones that have similar or higher pick rate. Mercury got a ridiculous buff with Golden Bow and we'll probably see a nerf very soon, and Baron Samedi has been a very strong performer ever since he made his way into ranked basically. So our Kuang is on the same level as those guys right now, and that means he's really out there doing work. All these stats are from Smite.gg, by the way, link will also be down below. And another website that also provides us with information is Smite Pro Builds, where we can see that quite a few pros have been playing our Kuang. Now, the ranked stats here are just to show how different builds are being used and that he's very successful there once again. But we can also look at the SPL games. Endenstar went 7-2-3, unfortunately still lost the game. Ice Ice Baby on the other hand went 3-7-6 in a game in the SPL with him not too long ago. And what we can see in terms of the builds here is that most of the builds that are being used are fairly different from Verizial still. We'll look at Verizial's in just a second. You see a lot of Bancroft's Talon, you see Pen Boots, you see at some point Demonic Grip, and you see at some point also Telkine's Ring, and then you see a lot of Spear of the Magus. These builds give me the impression of being a hybrid option between the two paths of going for ability or basic attack. But Verizial's build is a little bit different. Verizial, until a certain point at least, fully commits into the rings. He does not focus on anything related to ability damage, at least not until late game. And I personally highly prefer that. Two items that are in his build have received a buff in patch 5.12, shortly before the mid-season patch. One is Demonic Grip, which had its power increased from 50 to 65. The other one is Telkine's Ring, which increased its magical power from 70 to 90 and also increased the power scaling on the passive from 8% to 10%. At the time I said I was expecting someone sooner or later to somehow find a way to make good use of these items, and that is exactly what happened with our Kuang right here, right now. A very interesting interaction for our Kuang that is worth keeping in mind, which makes this so super good, is the interaction with Telkine's Ring. With Telkine's Ring, your basic attacks deal bonus damage equal to 10 plus a 10% of your magical power. This effect does not hit structures. Doesn't matter much, we're here to kill people. And what our Kuang has is an attack chain that goes 1, 0.5, 0.5, 0.5 in terms of swing time. The damage values are a little bit different, but that doesn't really matter for us because what's important is that this damage does always get the full Telekine's effect. An 0.5 swing will still get the 10 plus 10% and not 5 plus 5%. So it's essentially similar to the function of Kinsai's on guards with a lot of attack speed, only that our Kuang just shreds ridiculously more in most situations through the effect of Telekine's Ring, on top of his normal basic attacks and on top of the dragons that he can also use. Essentially, aside of his first basic attack, he gets double the benefit from Telekine's Ring compared to a guard that has a normal attack chain of 1-1-1. And once you've hit level 20 and finished 3 rings in the build, you'll also have a total attack speed of 2.14, 2.14. So with that, you will be able to get at least 3 procs of the ring per second, if not more, depending on the situation and your other items. You've already seen the build earlier in the clip, but let's go through it in detail. The build starts with Assassin's Blessing, which will provide you with a little bit of flat penetration, meaning you don't have to invest into that. The first item you start is Hastened Ring, which will give you more attack speed, power, movement speed, and the passive that allows you to stick to targets when you take them down long enough to actually do that. It's not the first item you finish though. What you finish before are CDR boots. You can also go pen boots here, but I think CDR boots are your better bet. You will relatively early in the game in most situations have Demonic Grip for protection shred, you have the flat penetration from Assassin's Blessing, and the extra CDR does a lot for our Kuang, especially for his 3 and essentially for his clear as well and his re-engage potential. And this re-engage potential is very strong in many situations with how this build works. The next item Verizial finished in this particular game is the Telkine's Ring. This gives him a huge damage spike. I've already explained how this works, though I will say depending on the situation you may also have to finish Demonic Grip first. In my game I had an Artio that was in my face the entire time and built magical defense early, so Demonic Grip made more sense for me and it's also a little bit more accessible price-wise. When you can get it, Telkine's is the better option though, as it will take down squishies much quicker and those should be your primary targets. After those rings, you're pretty much already sorted in my opinion. The item that he built afterwards is especially interesting to me though. It is Void Stone, which in my game actually worked out well as well because I had 3 magical opponents. This item gives you immediate protection reduction once an enemy is close to you, and it also makes you more survivable, something that our Kuang is otherwise lacking a little bit. I don't think he would have built this in any matchup, he was simply against 3 magical targets as well, and another more aggressive option is definitely still Spear of the Magus here, which will allow for a lot more flat protection shred and basically give you true damage. And that also obviously helps the passive of Telkine's Ring once again. But at this point there are a lot of paths to finish up the build. You could for example go for a late Bancroft to have some more sustain in fights, you could go for a Magi's Blessing to avoid being CC'd too much, and you could also go into a Mantle of Discord to drastically increase the survivability against aggressive playstyle enemies. Even options like Rod of Tahuti for a massive power spike, or trading out your boots for a Toxic Blade if you feel like you need some more attack speed and anti-heal to get to the almost attack speed cap, are things that you can consider. What you opt for here is obviously down to preference as long as you have those rings. The crucial point is not to build Shaman's Ring earlier on. That was a mistake I often made trying to get Shaman's Ring in there somewhere, and it really doesn't help you that much compared to these rings. And that's it for the overview for the new Ao Kuang attack speed build. Let me know down in the comments below if you're as excited as I am about this being back or if you'd rather never see this again. Also let me know if you want to hear me talk about SPL builds and guards a little bit more in my videos. I hope this was interesting and insightful. If you're new to the channel, feel free to click the sub button and the bell, it really helps me out. Other than that, see you for the next one tomorrow. DukeSloth, out.